to 6, a helping hand with your land.
Morning! Actually a nice morning today. Finally got into some of these low 60-degree springtime days. Just getting off this morning on my third phone call in what feels like about the last week for a customer who's gone out and bought a used implement and is completely, really reasonably unable to make that up to their tractor. So I'm going to show you a couple of things today on loaders, backhoes, and front implements when it comes to looking at used ones and mating them up to a new tractor. So when we look at putting a loader onto a tractor, there's a couple of pieces that are involved in pretty much making any loader work, and they're all very easy to see on this New Holland here. So generally you can break your loaders up into 3 different parts. There's the boom assembly itself that's going to do the lifting. There's a hydraulic valve body itself that controls what fluid is going through the hoses, and then a lever kit up here on the tractor that allows you to operate that. Many times when you're looking at used loaders, a loader that was taken off of a tractor that it was once installed on, saying that came from some kind of damage or an insurance claim or somebody that just isn't using their implement as frequently as they thought, what they'll do is go and set this loader off to the side somewhere, but they're not going to go through the work in order to remove this valve body itself and the lever control up here on the top of the tractor. What I so often see is that when somebody goes through and buys a loader like this, they don't have those hydraulic pieces in order to be able to operate it, and going and buying those things can be really costly. Valves and all the parts and assemblies to do that, they don't come through in complete kits, so that you need to go back into a dealership parts counter and buy all of the bits and pieces in order to make that work, and it can get really costly really quickly. Another piece that they'll frequently miss too is the weldment back in here between the tractor and the loader to put these 2 things together, right? In order to take that piece off, there's bolts that need to come off and that kind of thing, and that's often overlooked, right? Usually when you see these things used, it's just the boom set off to the side and not the mounting hardware and the hydraulics that it takes in order to mount everything up. But those are just the pieces that it takes in order to make sure that that loader is complete, without ever diving into saying, does it fit the tractor that you have at all? Many people will falsely make the assumption that just because New Holland made the loader or Kubota made the loader, that it can fit across a wide variety of implements, and that is completely untrue. You would be really surprised how much variety that there is in this stuff and how specific those kits need to be to a given model in order to fit a certain tractor. When we go across and look at machines like this BX right here and the mounting points down here for that loader, or these, those subframes, those frames that the loader drops into, that support rack bolts into the frame, is completely different from one machine to the next in a lot of cases. And the hydraulics that it takes to be able to go through and mount that valve in an appropriate place and plumb it into the tractor just requires those very specific kits. So if you see a loader that's like 10 years old and think, oh, I've got an orange tractor too, I'm gonna mount this thing up, run the other direction. There are so many pieces that need to be right between that loader and that tractor to make that work. That's just, if it works at all, you're gonna spend as much money as what you saved buying a used one, finding all the pieces in order to make it work. So it's actually pretty unusual to find loose loaders like this, right? It's once you've owned a tractor and you've seen the functionality that you get out of a loader, it's really unusual to see somebody remove it from a tractor. From the financial perspective, it absolutely hurts the resale value of your machine. Your loader and tractor are going to be worth way more money with those 2 pieces together than if you go through the work of trying to separate them and sell the loader off separately. So if you're ever thinking about that, keep what you've got together. Backhoes, though, however, are a place that you'll see this kind of stuff attempted a lot more frequently, right? When you have a backhoe, you have something that is a lot more expensive, and so there's a lot more desire to have a used one. And you also have a lot more sitting around where they're not being utilized and they kind of fall out of use, right? Somebody buys one for a handful of projects that they have, and after those things are done, the thing kind of gets cast off to the side and sits, and sometimes will turn up on the used market. There's even more specificity in the backhoe than there is in the loader. When you look at the hose here, I've got a Woods Groundbreaker here that I'm beside. If you're looking for an aftermarket backhoe, bar none, these guys are the best. They have made aftermarket backhoes for a long time, and the quality of them is fantastic. There's a lot of very specific mounting stuff that has to happen between these. We've talked in other videos before about not buying 3-point hitch mounted backhoes because they can damage your 3-point and in extreme circumstances even snap tractors in half. When you don't have that 3-point hitch backhoe, you need to have a subframe, right? The proper mounting system in order to put that backhoe onto the tractor where it supports the underside of the machine and ties the backhoe much more rigidly to the tractor. That takes a subframe. Okay, now I get a lot of phone calls from people that say, I have this used backhoe and I need a subframe, thinking that somehow the subframe is a universal tie point between all these pieces. There is nothing universal about taking a backhoe with a subframe from one tractor to the next. That subframe is specific not only to the tractor to have the right mounting points on the tractor, it's also specific to the backhoe, needing the right mounting points on the backhoe as well. So you simply can't reach out and grab any old random used backhoe there or buy the cheapy Chinese thing off of eBay and call up and buy a wood subframe. That doesn't work. You need to have the right subframe for the right tractor for the right backhoe in order to tie all of these things together. And this is something that matters. It's really hard to do this right. And I have seen multiple people go down the road of thinking that they got some kind of bargain deal on a backhoe, only to find out that they're completely unable in order to mount it up to their tractor appropriately. So loaders are hard, backhoes are hard, but surely there's something out here that's easy, right? Mower decks? No. When we look at a mower deck, even as generations of tractors go by, those mounting frames and the way that the mower deck mounts to the tractor really changes a lot between generations of machines. If a company stretches a chassis a little bit or even changes tire options, say puts on a slightly larger set of tires, it impacts the way that that mower mounts underneath the tractor. Now, there is a little bit more flexibility here. If you're staying within the same product series, say a Kubota GR series garden tractor or a BX series subcompact, there are some cases where you could take mower decks from one generation and move them on to the next. That's usually going to be reflected in their model code. So the current 80 series BX tractor, for example, uses a -23 BX mower deck, and that carries back into the prior series starting from about the 50, 60, 70, and 80 series are all using that same -23 BX mower deck. So sometimes you could pick up on the places where this is maybe slightly possible by watching that full model code and watching for commonality between one to the next. But you do want to be really cautious. Even within the same product family, you will see times that you have attachments that don't carry back and forth between models. So be cautious of that. And that usually it's small things. It's going to be mounting tabs and that kind of stuff that if you've got a welder, you probably can overcome it by moving some stuff around, but certainly is not going to be plug and play in many, many instances. You could probably guess to this point that this doesn't get any easier as you get into more unique implements. The things that go onto the front of a tractor, your front blades, front snowblowers, front brooms, the stuff that mounts onto the belly of the machine is perhaps the most specific of all of these things. You need to not only get the front mounting kit right to be able to support those implements on the tractor, you also have the drive shafts right, going from the generally a carrier bearing up at the front of that hitch back to where your mid PTO is. And the hitch itself needs to accept the proper implements as well. So in the front attachment space, you've got a lot of different places to check and make sure that you have the right commonality. You take a look here at this B2660 front snowblower, right? Looks like a pretty common 60-inch front snowblower or so, but when we get back here to the mounting frame stuff and you look at these brackets and stuff, you can see this is just simply not something that you're easily going to throw onto any old random tractor, right? It's going to be made for a very specific machine. Now, there are cases where us in the dealership side are pretty good at going and knowing how to carry implements forward. Say if we're going from a 50 series to an 80 series BX series tractor, right? You won't see Kubota go through and show forward compatibility guides. In fact, no manufacturer does a very good job of saying, this old implement that you bought 10 years ago, here's how you continue to use it. It's just not something that they tend to document very well for you to be able to pick up that information and for us to be able to pass on. However, good experienced sales guys or parts technicians are often able to go through and identify the differences between these series and find ways to carry things forward. So if we're taking, say, a front attachment from a 18 series BX where the tractor's a little shorter and going to a 23 series BX where the chassis is a little longer, we know what parts to swap out in the drive lines there in order to make that drive line just a little bit longer in order to make it continue to work. Or if you're going from a 70 series front attachment to an 80 series front attachment, knowing that those things actually are compatible if you remove the grill guard off of your tractor. It's some of the bits and pieces that our guys pick up on over the years of servicing this equipment that the manufacturers don't do a great job of spelling out for you. So when you're looking at these front attachments, know that, if we're staying with relatively modern stuff in like-sized machines, you can probably get some help, but certainly reach out to a dealership and start asking some questions before you go down this road. Personally saw a guy blow almost $2,000 at the parts counter here over the last couple of weeks trying to do exactly this, of piecing together something where we just don't have the right compatibility path in order to make it work. So if we roll this up in summary, I think it really shows the importance of industry standards, right? If you're looking at a piece of equipment and you have the opportunity to say, move from a garden tractor into a tractor with a 3-point hitch in order to get rear implements, right? Huge value in doing that because the 3-point hitch is an industry standard. Same thing goes for your front loader. If you have the opportunity to buy a skid steer coupler or stay away from some weird proprietary system, certainly do it, right? Because it gives you industry standard ways in order to swap implements and attachments from one machine to the next. That doesn't exist today for things like mid-mount mowers, backhoes, and front attachments. You just have this huge variety of very specific implements, and going and taking ones off the used market and fitting it to a tractor that you already own can be wildly complicated and often hit and miss for so many people. The best advice that I can give is if you're going to go down this road and do it completely on your own, is make sure that you're buying implements that came off of the same model tractor that you already have. If not the same model, one in that family that you know is identical, and absolutely reach out to a local dealership and ask them first whether they think this is going to work before you spend the money, right? If you're standing at some random auction and a nice shiny loader goes across it, but you have no idea what it fits, you're going to spend way more money trying to get that thing fit up to an incorrect tractor than you ever would have saved buying a used one. So if you're going down this road and we can help,